Hello, it's Sammy here, and today I want to talk about why addiction is a mindset and not behavior. And personally, I really love this concept because this concept breaks down addiction from its roots and it reveals the true nature of addiction. And when you understand this true nature, you can also understand how you can dissolve your own addiction. So let's talk about it. So when we usually talk about addiction, people usually talk about the form of addiction. They talk about alcohol addiction, drug addiction, gambling addiction, sex addiction, addiction to money, whatever the form is. But I would say that when we start to dive deeper into the addiction, then the form addiction becomes irrelevant because those forms are just effects of real addiction. The real addiction is this mindset, it's the state of being that creates the outcomes of alcohol, drugs, or whatever the form is. So, if we can understand this state of being, what makes the state of being of addiction and also the state of being of sobriety, then we can have better understanding how we can break free and also build these states of beings. So what is the key component of the mindset of addiction? The key component is pain. It's the trauma. And more specifically, it's the discontentment what we have with ourselves or with our lives. And usually the trauma is the reason for this discontentment. Because, when we talk about being content with ourselves or being discontent with ourselves, those things are not really your conscious decisions that you can make, but they are also outcomes. And you can say that you are content with yourself, or you can say that you love yourself, or you love your life. But if you don't really subconsciously feel those states, then it doesn't matter what you say, because our feelings will always win what we say, because we are sentient beings. And the most fundamental basic needs that maybe every human being desires is the being content with yourself and being able to enjoy your own presence. But if we live in a state of discontentment, that we can't really enjoy our own being or our own presence, then if we find some behavior that can give us taste of this state of contentment, then we will do anything to get this state back. So it means that we will do anything to just repeat this addictive behavior. And this is the real addiction. It's this mindset of discontentment. Really, when we dive deeper into addiction, it's not anymore about pleasure, but it clearly fulfills some psychological need in a person's life. And it's usually this discontentment thing. If your normal state is the state of discontentment, and you can get freedom from that discontentment with some behavior, then it's a really big thing to have in life, because basically then the addictive behavior means freedom. It means freedom from this state of discontentment. And that kind of addiction, it's way stronger and deeper than just a pleasure, because it's really fulfills this psychological need that every human being wants to have. And that's why there are people, who do behaviors that they know that will lead to death, but still they don't, quit those behaviors. Because, in that moment when they are doing that behavior, they are not going to think about negative consequences, but they only think about this freedom that it gives them. This freedom is the real addiction. Well, when you live normally in the state of discontentment, and you can have even temporary freedom from that with some behavior, then you will do anything to get that state, which means that you will just repeat this behavior no matter consequences. So now you can have a better understanding the real nature of addiction. Usually it's this, it solves this very deep psychological problem. And that's why it's so hard to stop these addictions. And these things why you have the addictions are usually very unconscious. They are not really your conscious mind. Your conscious mind going to only say that, okay, I do this behavior because it gives me pleasure. But our behavior comes 95% from our subconscious. So it really doesn't matter what your conscious mind says, because the truth lies in your subconscious. So maybe the hardest part of dissolving your addiction is to really reveal the cause of your addiction. It's about revealing this unconscious reason what addiction solves in your life. Because addiction is always solution, not a problem. It solves some problem in your life. And usually it solves this discontentment. So how you can start to dissolve your addiction? How this process goes? So you need two things: method and system. And so I can speak my own experience how I dissolved my addiction. So I also have been having like alcohol addiction, drug addiction, benzodiazepine addiction, and other addictions also. And the way how I dissolved my addiction was the method named IFS. So the IFS is a therapy model, and it stands for Internal Family System. And it basically can identify your root cause of addiction, and it can solve that addiction, or we can say dissolve, because you basically solve or dissolve the identity behind the addiction. And when then that identity is solved, then that sobriety arises naturally. And yeah, IFS was one way how I dissolved my addiction. And I also have really strong systems in my own personal life that supported my sobriety and this dissolving process. So what I mean about systems? So I mean about your habits, how you live your life, having very strong physical health, daily exercise routine, and having a clean diet, having a good sleep hygiene, those kind of things. Then I read daily. I read about topics like addiction, trauma, psychology, spirituality, philosophy, everything that helped me to handle this problem of addiction better. And even if you start to just read books about addiction, trauma, it helps you so much, because you can make better decisions in those realms when you start to understand addiction and trauma better. And maybe the one of the most important thing in this process of dissolving your addiction is to understand yourself. You have to understand some basic principles about addiction and trauma, but then you have to start to look at yourself and how these principles manifest in your own life, and what can be the reason for this discontentment in your life. And when you understand yourself better and more deeply, more subconscious level, then it's really easier to dissolve addiction, because the addiction is usually is in those subconscious realms. And we talk about being able to enjoy your presence, and even talking about the being in the present moment. But I would say that being in the present moment is byproduct of being content with yourself. So when you start to understand yourself better, and when you start to be more content with yourself, then the automatic result of that is presence, and you really enjoy to be this new presence. So yes, and one of the other habits that can support this dissolving process can be like meditation, journaling. When you meditate, you raise your base awareness, and you start to break your unconsciousness. And the more we are, the more we have awareness, the more quality life we will have. And when you journal, when you write down your problems, basically what it does, you get the problems out of your head. And when you get them out of your head, it's really big thing to have in life, because it equals more clarity and more clear mind, and then you have more clarity to handle your addiction. So those can be systems how you can dissolve your addiction. So having the method like IFS, you can do your own research. IFS is not only method, but it's for sure, it's very well known to be a great cure for addiction. So I really recommend to check it out and read book which name is No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz. So he's basically the founder of the IFS therapy model. So check that book, and also check other methods how you can solve or dissolve the trauma or addiction if you are interested. And then build systems that supports your sobriety. These are your habits, like reading, meditating, journaling, things like that. And then when you just start to do those things daily basis, then in some point you will be addiction free permanently. It's just a matter of time. But if you keep doing right things consistently, you will break free, because it's the law of cause and effect, and that law works for everyone. So yes, that's basically my message for this video. So let's do a little recap. So the main idea of this video was that addiction is a mindset, and addiction is not really about pleasure, but the real addiction is this psychological need that addiction fulfills. It gets you this freedom from this state of discontentment, and that makes addiction so hard to stop. And we also learned that addiction, sobriety are both state of beings, and drinking, drugs, or whatever the form is effect from these state of beings. So we have to just understand how we create and break free from these state of beings. And then you learned this how you can dissolve your addiction, understanding the method that help you identify and heal the trauma, and then building systems in your daily life that supports your sobriety. And when you just keep doing those things daily basis, you will break free in some point. It's just a matter of time. So yes, thank you for watching this video, and I hope that this can give you better understanding how you can dissolve your addiction. So bye bye.